Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. And my name is Julie Shields Rutina. I am the Director of College Planning, Education, and Training for MEFA. And this morning, our MEFA Institute lesson is helping students and parents approach the college choice process systematically. And we're so fortunate to have our expert speakers with us this morning. We have Timothy Poynton, who's Associate Professor of Counseling and School Psychology at UMass Boston, and Amanda Stirk, who is CEO and founder of College Unmazed. And I am going to let them tell you a little bit more about themselves when they begin, because they have great backgrounds, and they've been working together and fortunately helping us and working with us for some time as well. I'll just mention that this is a MEFA Institute lesson. And so we will send out the slides and the recording to you later this week. And you can share that with other colleagues, and that you can receive professional development points for attending these professional development workshops and webinars. And so come back often. We have a lot of offerings here you can find on our website in the counselors section. And so we hope you take advantage of all of those throughout the year. And finally, I'll just say that I hope you know that MEFA really wants to be here to support you and your work. So also just know you can feel free to reach out to us by phone, by email, anything you'd like. And we want to be able to be that resource for you. So thank you all. And at this point, I'm going to turn it right over to Amanda and Tim.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for being here today. So our topic is one that both Tim and our partner Rich really care about, and we know that you do as well. And it's helping students and parents approach the college choice process systematically. Like, how do we actually walk students through that college choice process? And what are some strategies that you can use to really do so in a comprehensive way? And just as a reminder, please use the chat and the Q&A if you have any questions throughout this presentations, or if you want to reach out to us later, if you're watching this as a recording, please do so. We are excited to be here. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi. So again, Tim Poynton. I've been working with Amanda now for several years. And just to give you a little bit of backdrop on where this came from, basically Amanda reached out to Rich and I, who have been doing research in college and career readiness for a while. We'll just leave it at that. Basically, it was fortuitous for Rich and I because we were just starting to work on a book for parents and students on the college choice process. So we looked at what Amanda was doing, focused on the state of Florida, and it was wonderful, approachable for students and families. So we took basically, long story short, kind of combined forces in 2020, I think it was, right? And developed our first book, The College Unmazed, Your Guide to Navigate the High School to College Maze, which basically speaks to, and what we'll talk about today, is an informed decision-making process that helps students and families approach the process, the college-going process, systematically while paying attention to both facts and feelings. Because I think since the advent of the internet, really, the problem is that it's not the problem used to be that there wasn't enough information out there about colleges. Now there's an overwhelming amount of information out there about colleges. So what we've done through some of the tools and techniques that we propose is to really make it so that people can make an informed decision without getting overwhelmed. So, and that's what we're going to talk about today, and some tools, techniques, and resources for doing that. Do you have anything else to add to that, Amanda?
No, I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Dr. Amanda Sirk, and I have, just like you, was a school counselor practitioner and was a department of one and had, several hundred, about 400 students on my caseload, and really wanted to create a curriculum and a program to help my own students. And so slowly started building out some curriculum, partnering with other counselors within the area. And like I said, when I met up with Tim and Rich and all of their research and background and really kind of the philosophy behind how we can get students and families through this kind of overwhelming process. I know Tim has a freshman in college, I have a senior in high school, and so as parents, and even though we know the system, we know what's going on, is how do we reach all of our students in a very open, systematic way, and making sure that everybody has the same information and that they can actually make an informed decision as they go through the process. And Dr. Richard LePan is our other partner in crime and is fantastic. So, and our information there again is you can see our websites on www.collegeunmazed.com. So let's get in the information. So the first thing that we did is we really wanted to look at the student and the process holistically. So how do we start a student as early as freshman, even 8th grade year, to go through this college and career readiness process? So we divided our materials into two sections. One is to really build the skills and the requisite things that they need to know to be successful in a college or career environment. So in the first section, we find that we focus on 4 key areas: building what we call your U factor, where we talk about your 8 strengths as a student. We go into your academic factor. What are some of the opportunities at your school or even outside of your school, whether that's dual enrollment, AP class, MOOCs, massive open online courses, and really talking about, GPAs and transcripts and how that all fits into college admissions. We also then go into the career factor. So how do you use your values and interest and your abilities to really define what you want to be and how to explore those options. And then we put money early into the conversation. A lot of times we see that not until the very end, until senior year, when you start talking about FAFSA and scholarships. And we really believe that college is affordable. And so we need to talk about those opportunities early in the student process. And then the second section of the book is something called the LEAD strategy, which we'll go over with that today. So I won't go too much in depth, but the LEADS is an acronym: building a college list, exploring colleges, applying to colleges, deciding on a college, and succeeding once you are there. Go ahead, Tim. So one of the things that we love in all of our materials, you will find that we really take all the information and break it down into really small chunked areas where you can focus as a counselor. So some of our big things here are our mind maps. So we have 2 mind maps, both showing the critical information and knowledge that a family needs to know at the right time. Because if you knew this all at one time, it can get really overwhelming for students. I know just recently I went to my daughter's Rising Junior Night, and they threw a lot of terms, a lot of information at families. Again, I've been in the field, so I understood it. But if I was a family that was a first generation family, or maybe had never gone through this process with a child before, it would have been really overwhelming. And so we believe chunking it and looking at each kind of key area together is really important. And these are completely free. We have them by 18 by 24 posters. So if you are interested in one, feel free to email us your address and we can get you several posters. So you can see here the key things in each section: U factor, academic factor, career factor, and money factor. Go ahead, Tim. And then we come into the LEADS, as I mentioned. So really one of the things that we see going on is, as Tim said, it can be an overwhelming process. When you have over 2,400, 4-year universities, and if you add in 2 years and technical colleges on top of that, you're talking about, 4,000 plus schools. And so how do we narrow down a student's list? And so we're going to walk through that today with you. And So we're going to narrow down the list. We want them to explore all of their options and really look at the data and who they are as a student. And we're also going to introduce something to you called the 6 keys of college fit, which you'll see here in a little bit. And then the apply, we want to get down a little bit further. We know they can't apply to everywhere, and how to really create a pathway to do so, how to decide on that college, and then how to develop a plan for success. Go ahead. And then here is our other mind map. So again, if you would like this poster, please let us know. They're really fun. And to me, I point to them all the time as a counselor, like, look at list, and these are the things in list you need to know. So you'll see there, we have the 6 keys, the different college programs that they might be interested, whether that's a 2+2 program, honors, looking at limited access or direct entry programs, maybe it's an HBCU. So really kind of talking about the different types of colleges and what pathway might be good for you. Explore, again, we dive into lots of different areas. So please let us know if you need any of these, but they are really cool and fun to use. All right, let's get into the leads. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, so this is some of you may have seen this picture before. This is from Gestalt psychology, and I like to use this to illustrate what I think the challenge is for students and families going into the college process, right? So when you look at this picture, um, usually people see one of two things, but not both things. There's two things in this picture. If you focus on the white space, you'll see two faces kind of facing each other. And if you focus on the black space, if you will, it's a chalice or an ornate vase, right? But if I tell you that focusing on the white space, you can see two faces, then you can see it. But naturally, this is again from Gestalt psychology. Long story short, in our world, there's so much stimuli, so our brain uses schemas and takes shortcuts essentially to make sense of all of the stimuli that it encounters. Um, so, but if we tell you, hey, slow down and focus on this particular piece, you can see the whole picture. And that's what we want as students and families are going through the college process, is to see the whole picture about the colleges that they're considering. And we can do that with, as Amanda alluded to earlier, what we call the 6 keys of college fit. So to most students and families, they're using 2 or 3 of these keys kind of naturally. And we think that essentially each of the 6 keys of college fit deserves at least a little bit of attention in the college going process. And essentially what we've done and what we'll walk through today is instead of looking at everything about all 6 keys right from the get-go, as you go through the leads process, we help students and families focus on the parts that are most important at each step of the college going process so that it's not so overwhelming, and yet all of the information still gets attended to. So these are the 6 keys. I'll go over them briefly. The first one's academic match. That's things like your academic credentials, if you will, your measured academic abilities, and also things about the college environment, like the student to faculty ratio and the kinds of academic programs that they have available. It's also the selectivity of the college, looking at the Ivies and Ivy Lakes, for example, and the typically admitted students there. So that's looking at, again, the key to fit in that aspect is looking at how do my characteristics match up with what they offer, right, academically. We do the same thing career-wise. What are the career-related opportunities available at that college aligned with what you feel like you need, and includes things like access to an alumni network, service learning or internships or co-ops and things like that. Do they offer robust career placement services? How many students are placed in or are employed in their chosen field within 6 months or 1 year after graduation, right? A lot of colleges will report that information. You sometimes have to dig for it, but it's there. So that's the career match. The financial match is one of the keys that students and families often kind of naturally pay attention to. And we really like to focus on, particularly at private colleges, what the difference is between the sticker price or the advertised price and the actual price. So it's looking at, using the more technical terms, the cost of attendance versus the net price, right? So obviously, we like to focus on the net price, but a lot of students and families will look at a private college, for example, and say, oh, well, I'm not applying to any private colleges because they're too expensive. But if you look into just a few pieces of data, you might find that, you know what, the average discount at this private college is actually 50%. And that puts it a lot closer to to the cost of attending a state school, if you look at it a little bit. So we provide tools and resources to get that information easily, and and how to look at the publicly available information to get a sense of that, to ensure that people aren't excluding colleges from consideration that might be great fits otherwise, because they don't have all of the information to make a good informed decision about the financial match. Personal match is another one that a lot of students and families naturally pay attention to. It's things like, how far is it from home? Do I like the dorms and the living arrangements, or is it a commuter school, etc. We also like to encourage people to think about diversity on campus, both for diverse viewpoints and for particularly for underrepresented students. Are they going to feel like they fit in on that campus, or is it a predominantly white institution, for example? So those are aspects of the personal match. And then the student outcomes is one that we find that a lot of students and families don't pay a ton of attention to, but might deserve a little bit more of attention. So student outcomes are really looking at things like graduation and retention rates, the salary of alumni, and right now, the loan default rate at every college is 0 because loan repayment was paused for so long during the pandemic. But next year, the loan default rates are going to come out. And what you find is once you get so at the Ivy League and highly selective colleges, you find the student outcomes are all really good in those places because they have a history of admitting really successful students who continue being successful when they get to college, right? But once you get below that highly selective tier, you'll find there's actually a good bit of variability in student outcomes. So they admit similar kinds of students with similar academic backgrounds, but the kinds of supports that they provide leads to different outcomes for students in terms of 4-year and 6-year graduation rates and the retention rates. So I like to think of the retention rate. So just if you're not familiar, and I apologize if you are, but the retention rate is to me a really important metric because I like to call that the freshman satisfaction score, because it describes the number of students or the percent of freshmen who were supported at that college and satisfied enough with their experience to return as sophomores. So that's a really important metric, and it varies sometimes considerably among colleges, and important to look at. I would never exclude a college based on any one of these metrics, but it raises questions that you should get answers to as part of the college going process. And then the last key is the student support. It's the kinds of academic supports that they provide on the campus, from tutoring, academic supports. Do they have counseling center? If you're working with a student that has a disability, what is the level of support that they provide for students with disabilities? That's something that varies tremendously from college to college. So and it's very different from how the supports are provided in high schools, right? So as you likely know, at college, self-advocacy is much more important to getting access to accommodations than it is at the K-12 level. So students and families need to be prepared for that. And those are the 6 keys, right? So basically what we do is, again, going through the leads process, we have people pay attention to particular parts of each of the 6 keys at each step to ensure that they're not overwhelmed and they can make an informed decision along the way. Something new, relatively new, it's about a year old now, that we've been doing at College on Maze is focusing on college fit priorities, and the college fit priorities are kind of operationalized through the 6 keys of college fit. So something that we know, and right, is that looking at those 6 keys, some keys are naturally going to be more and less important. So what we have developed is a way for you to help students and families assess what's important to them in relation to the 6 keys of college fit. So I think this is really important and helpful, but also necessary for students who are feeling overwhelmed by the college going process. This helps give them focus so that they're not trying to pay attention to everything, but they're really focusing in on those things that are most important to them. And for students who are less engaged in the process or don't know what to look for, this gives them ideas of things that they should be paying attention to given their kind of measured priorities. So we developed a card sort activity. It's both a set of physical cards that we have. You can't see those so well, but also an online platform that we developed through our website. We're gonna have the link here in just a second for that. That gives you a way to really help students think about the 6 keys of college fit, and again, operationalize them in somewhat tangible ways. So we've got 2 ways of doing this assessment. this College Fit Priorities assessment. If everything seems important, you might use a highly structured approach, which we're going to go over here in a second. And if you get the I don't know response for people who are less engaged or don't know what to look for, you can use a less structured approach to the card sort assessment. So where you'll find this is at collegeofmaze.com/mycfponline. We don't have this linked from our main navigation, but we do provide this link to folks who attend our trainings and view our webinars. So this is where it is on the website. I'd recommend if you're going to do this activity with a student or family that they don't try to do it on a phone. It's a little bit frustrating, but it's better done on a tablet or larger size device. And I would recommend that you go into the full screen mode. You'll see on this page, there's two different assessments. At the top here is the highly structured one, which we'll go over in a second, and then the less or unstructured approach to using the card sort assessment. So in the highly structured assessment, basically what we've got is 24 cards, four cards for each of the 6 keys of College Fit, and basically you read each card and then put it into one of these 6 columns, right? So this basically, try to be brief. What this does is this forces people to distinguish between what is more and less important to them, because you can only put 4 cards in the extremely important column, right? So if having easy access to professors and small class sizes is important to you, then you'll put this in the extremely important column. And the way that what's underneath here, what it says in the black area, it's the student to faculty ratio. That's the objective piece of information that you can look at to get a sense of that student to faculty, the class sizes. So you do this for all, I'm not going to do this for all 24 cards, but basically you go through and you place all the cards. And then what I recommend folks do essentially is they take a screenshot of it so that you can keep it. There's no way that we have right now to be able to log in and create an account or anything like that. So just place the cards, take a screenshot, and then they can discuss that with you and keep their results. Something else that can be helpful is doing this, having the students do it with their parents and have the parents do one set and the student do another, so that they can actually talk about the areas that they have different priorities in. Right. The students may be paying more attention to the money side of things, while the student is focusing more on the personal match side of things, right? Like that's somewhat natural. So, but this gives a vehicle for actually highlighting and talking about that. So that's the highly structured approach. In the unstructured or the less structured approach, basically what you're doing is you're taking those same 24 cards, it's the same cards, but you're going to put them into basically one of 2 buckets at the start, things that are not at all important to you, and then things that are at least somewhat important. And then you get 5 spots over here for things that are very important to you. And you only get the 5 spots. So again, this is less structured. A lot of students and families find this a little bit easier to approach, just putting the things into the different buckets, if you will. But then you've got to identify these 5 things that are really critically important. And then those 5 things can become the focus of what you pay attention to when you're reviewing colleges to apply to and attend. All right. So that's the My College Fit Priorities card sort. Amanda, you have anything to add to that, or?
No, I think it's fantastic. And I know we both have used it with our own children and with students that we work with all the time. And it really, like you said, as a parent, having gone through the process, it really highlights what was important to me and what was important to my daughter. And so when we were having those conversations, like you said, it really just made it like we knew where we were coming from. And so we were able to have that conversation. So such a great activity. And they are color coded to the keys. So you will start seeing some patterns, whether it's academic or career. So you'll start seeing if it's yellow, green, and so forth. So there's a lot of great information. So definitely try it with your students for sure. Good job.
Great. So now we'll go through the lead strategy, right? Which is that step-by-step sequence. All students and families kind of go through this process to some extent, right? Everybody makes a list. Everybody explores the colleges that are on their initial list to figure out which ones to apply to. And then from those places they applied and received positive decisions from, they decide which one to attend, right? Like everybody does that. So what we're going to do now is talk about which aspects of the 6 keys you pay attention to essentially at each step and how you do that. So in the list phase, we encourage people to pay attention to just 3 of the 6 keys. We have people pay attention to the personal match, how far is it from home, location, small town, big city, etc. How big is the campus? We have people also pay attention to the career match in terms of do they have the programs that I'm interested in? And even if they're undecided, they probably have a sense, students and families probably have a sense of do they want to go to a STEM-oriented school or do they want to go to a more liberal arts-oriented school, etc. So they've got to have at least some programs that you're interested in exploring, even if you're undecided. And then academic match is the other key that you're paying attention to. Do they have, online or distance learning courses if that's important? What is it, a 2-year or a 4-year college, etc. So we're really just paying attention to those things. And in this initial list phase, we recommend that students ideally have about 10 to 15 colleges, but that varies from place to place. Like, for example, California has 233 4-year colleges. Massachusetts has 91. Wyoming has 3 4-year colleges. So again, we say 10 to 15 and we recommend that, but as always, context matters, right? If you want to go to if you want to ensure that you're looking at all the state schools in Wyoming, well, there's only 3 of them. You might not have even 10 on your list of colleges that you're considering there. So we're fortunate in Massachusetts to have such a small geographic footprint with such a large number of colleges available to us, and free community college now, which is wonderful. So all right, so that's the list phase, right? To me, this is the most important step of the college search process because you want to ensure that you're not missing any good options, which is why we don't include finance on here. We don't include the financial match key here because we don't want people to exclude colleges that might otherwise fit them really well just because of the cost. It's not that the cost isn't important, but at this step of the process, it might lead to people excluding perfectly good, affordable colleges, actually. So we encourage folks to keep even colleges that they perceive to be unaffordable, which very well may be unaffordable, you might learn later, but we encourage people not to exclude them too early in the process. There's lots of tools you can use for this. We like the College Navigator because it's freely available to everybody across the country, right? It's paid for by our tax dollars, driven by IPEDS data, which all colleges contribute to. But there's other tools like Naviance, Score, MEFA Pathways, if you're using that in Massachusetts, freely available to folks, which does a lot of the things that Score and Naviance do, right? So if you're not familiar with MEFA Pathways, ping Julie and she can get you more information on that. It's a wonderful tool. So we don't really care where you get the information from, but again, we focus on the College Navigator just because we know that that's freely available to everybody that we talk to. So you can use the College Navigator or any of the other search tools to essentially go through those initial keys to determine and create a list of results of colleges for you to consider. Right, so you can put in the zip code here, how far from home. You can put in the programs to ensure that you're only the only colleges that show up on your list have the academic programs that you're interested in, etc. So you just use this as an initial first step to begin going through and figuring out what colleges are out there that are available. Now, I'll say in this, just my daughter was interested in game design, and when I went through this process with her, UConn didn't show up as having a game design program. They actually have a really fantastic game design program, but for whatever reason, they don't call it game design and doesn't show up in the Navigator or in any of the college search tools. So I learned about the fact that they had a game design program at a college fair where I just happened to walk by and I asked the admissions counselor who engaged me. He said, "You have any questions about UConn?" And I said, "Well, yeah, do you have a game design program?" And he surprised me when he said yes. And they actually do. And it's a large program, graduates a good number of students every year. So that's just a long way of saying trust but verify. So I trust the results that the College Navigator provides, but you also need to verify that something's not missing on there because for whatever reason, UConn does not consider their game design program. They call it digital media and design, but it's a traditional and a high quality game design program. So now that you've got an initial list of hopefully somewhere between 10 to 15 colleges, and context matters, so we're not stuck on that number, but now you go into the explore phase where you dig into the rest of the 6 keys of the college fit a little bit. So now in the explore phase, you're looking at each of the 6 keys. But looking at different aspects of academic match, career match, and personal match, in addition to looking at the financial match, student support, and student outcome. So what we're doing here is now in the next phase of the college going process, we're trying to go from 10 to 15 colleges to 8 to 12 colleges. And this process we talk about it here in just a few minutes, but this process can take months. Because this includes you're gathering information not just from the computer, but you're also going and visiting college campuses. You're doing virtual tours. You're talking with people. You're talking with reps when they come into the high school, right? But here is where you begin to consider both cost and chance of admission as you're narrowing that list down, right? So you want to make sure that you don't have all schools on the list that, in spite of how well they fit you otherwise, you have a low chance of admission at, right? So that's the explore phase. Again, we're going through it somewhat briefly here, but this phase probably lasts months, right? And then in the apply phase, before we get to that, the apply phase is next. We're going to dig into a little bit into some things that you can explore. Hopefully you're all familiar with the Common Data Set. The Common Data Set Initiative, long story short, is a voluntary initiative that colleges participate in where essentially they provide public-facing information that makes it easier to engage in an informed decision. This is the common data set for UMass Amherst, actually, right? So we like to look at this in section C7. There's lots of information in the common data set you might look at, but in section C7, they go through the relative importance of factors in admissions decisions. So we like to focus on these things as both malleable and less malleable factors, right? So for a student who's a junior or a senior in high school, the GPA is very important at UMass Amherst, as is the rigor of their academic record, right? So the rigor of the courses that they've taken, those things are less malleable, frankly, by the time you're a senior in high school, right? But doing things like they don't consider the interview at UMass Amherst, but if a college that you're considering applying to does consider the interview, or considers it important or very important, then you're going to want to go out of your way to make sure that you do that optional interview because it matters to them and it might be the difference between being admitted and not admitted. The one I like to focus in here on is the level of applicant interest, more commonly known in admissions speak as demonstrated interest, right? The level of applicant interest is one of the things that students and families often aren't prepared for. And basically what it means is that if you don't demonstrate that you're interested in the college by doing a campus tour, talking with the college rep when they come and visit your high school, for example, signing up for and opening email messages that the colleges send you is another way that some colleges track demonstrated interest. So if you don't know that a college uses the level of applicants' interest when they make an admissions decision, you might be disadvantaged or the student will be disadvantaged in the process. So for example, low-income students often can't afford to go and do the tour at colleges that they're considering. So in spite of them being very interested, because they haven't demonstrated interest to the college, they might get a mark down on their application because they didn't do that tour. So, and you can find out if a college uses demonstrated interest through the Common Data Set. Now, not every college participates in the Common Data Set initiative, right? So to find the Common Data Set information, you just do a Google search with the college's name and then Common Data Set. And then that will bring you most often to the page on the college's website where they provide this information. But if they don't participate in the Common Data Set, just ask an admissions rep. This is not, whether or not they use demonstrated interest when making an admissions decision is not something that they typically advertise. It's also not something that if you ask them, they'll hide. So, but getting it from the common data set is just often easier and efficient. But do you have anything to add to this, Amanda? I know Amanda is a big fan of the common data set. So
I am. And actually one of the things that I've been using the common data set. So this is actually in C7 and C9, they actually show the percent of admitted students that use test scores, ACT and SAT, which we are seeing multiple schools, obviously going back to test required. And then they'll show you the averages of, kind of the mean there of what they do accept. So, while they, so colleges, test scores is one area that students, it seems a little vague on. Do you submit? Do you not? Who actually got admitted with those scores? So even though here on this example, standardized test scores are considered, I'd want a student to go in and actually see, is 25% of the students being accepted with test scores, and they're truly test optional, right? But if 80% of the students are coming in with test scores, while they're considered, it's actually showing that they're very important. So that's another good thing that I've been using. C7 and C9 are my go-to when working with students to provide that sort of back-end information you can't really find on the websites.
Yeah, great, thank you. And we've got about 20 minutes left. Yikes. All right, so here is just an example of information that's available in the College Navigator. So you find this in the financial aid section of the College Navigator that shows that here at this institution, 97% of the students were awarded institutional grants or scholarship, and the average amount of that is $40,000. So the sticker price was actually the listed sticker price for tuition is $60,000 plus another $14,000, adds up to $75,000, right? But with the discount, that discount is a 67% discount. So the question here isn't how do I get that institutional grant or scholarship? Only 3% don't. The question is, how do you not get it at this college, right? And the answer is typically international students tend to be the full pay students at colleges like this. But you'll find a lot of places, particularly the moderately to less selective private colleges, you'll see this percent of aid awarded in the high 90s, even 100% in a lot of places. So this is where you can go to get a ballpark figure of what the actual net price is. The other place to get that is there is a section of the College Navigator that does list the net price by income. So that's a slightly better tool. But even better than that is to use the net price calculator, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But here in Massachusetts, you may recall back in 2022, LaSalle College, LaSalle University, made headlines here. I heard about this on the local news before I heard about it anywhere else, like on the regular news, 5 o'clock news, that LaSalle was cutting their tuition by 33%, right? And this made news because they were dropping it from 59,000 to 39,000. And they were making headlines headlines about this. And I applaud LaSalle University's leadership for doing this because it basically increases the transparency so that students who don't know that this kind of thing happens with the discounting, it's just more transparent pricing. So I actually looked up LaSalle University for 22-23, and the actual average discount, this data does not reflect the 33% discount. This is the old tuition rates essentially. The tuition was $42,000 plus the room and board was $16,500. The actual average discount here, if you do the math, is 53%. So to me, that raises the question, what is LaSalle University doing with the other 20%? And time will tell. We're going to know here in just a few short weeks. In March, they tend to update the data. So we'll know here in a few short weeks what they're doing with that other 20%. My hope and my belief right now is that they're using the other 20% to distribute that in a need-based manner as opposed to a more merit-based manner, which is how this typically works. But LaSalle University in 22-23, before they instituted that policy, gave 100% of their students a 53% discount. Now they're going to be more transparent and they're going to drop the tuition by 33%. And I'm assuming that they're going to give the rest of that 20% that they were giving out that they're not anymore in a more need-based manner. All right. So here is again the net price by income for students. Where this falls short a little bit, just so that you know, like when we were looking at UConn, the net price by income that's provided is only provided for the in-state rates. So if you're looking at a place like UConn or University of Rhode Island that gets a sizable number of students that come from other states that are out-of-state students, you can't get the net price by income, unfortunately, using this tool or any other tool that I found. So just bear that in mind, that this is not for out-of-state students. This is for in-state students. But this net price information is what I like students and families to focus on because it describes the actual rates. And you'll see here, this is for UMass Amherst. You'll see here there's a big difference between the lowest income students and the students and families, the students that come from families that make $110,000 or more. So for low-income students at UMass Amherst, it's very, very affordable. You will find, again, long story short, if you look at places like Harvard and Yale, highly selective colleges, you'll find that number $5,000 or less in most of the Ivy League and Ivy League colleges. Those can be even more affordable than the state universities for talented low-income students. Another thing I'll just show you quickly, another free tool that we have available through College on Maze is what we call the College Data Organizer, which essentially is you can download this or use it as a Google Sheet. This is the Google Sheets version, where it pulls in all the information from where the College Navigator gets its data. For all of the 2- and 4-year colleges in the United States. So the way to use it, long story short, again, you can get this from collegeonmaze.com/downloads, is if you find the college here. So I like to use Google because you can use the autocomplete. So if we look here at UMass Amherst, right, and we can compare that to Suffolk University, my old employer. Basically what you do is when you put the college's name here in the list, it allows you to compare side by side all of the colleges with the publicly available information using the 6 keys of college fit. So you'll see this provides the percent of students who are admitted that actually enroll. That's the yield rate. It provides the percent of students that are admitted or the selectivity rate, right? It provides the 25th and 75th percentile scores for the SAT and the ACT and how many students submitted test scores, right? So it provides all that information, pulls it all in from the publicly available data, and allows you to compare up to 12 colleges using the 6 keys of college fit. You can get this information from other places, but obviously putting it all here in one place makes it a good bit easier. And we also provide some links down here at the bottom to some of their website, their admissions office, and the nut price calculator. So again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This is a free, publicly available download. We don't even ask for your email address. So this is a tool that a lot of counselors find helpful when working with students and families. And again, you can download this as an Excel version or a Google version. I think we like the Google version better just because it works a little bit easier and it's easier to share with students and families. So, so know that that's a free resource that we have through collegeonmaze.com as well. And thank you, Julie, for putting that link in the links in the chat. Appreciate that. All right, so that's the explore phase, right? So now you've gathered a lot of information. You've created a list, you've explored the list, now you've got it down. Now the task is to figure out which colleges are worth the time and money for the student and family to apply to. And the recommendation, not our recommendation, but the recommendation that we see other places, mostly from the College Board, is 5 to 8 colleges is a good number. Again, context matters, that's going to vary. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to go through and figure out how well each college fits you, ideally along using the 6 keys of college fit, using the college data organizer and your priorities, your measured priorities to figure out which colleges are worth the time and money for you to apply to. All right. The other part of the list phase or the apply phase, sorry, is that that we talk about in the book is how do you develop competitive applications, right? So we're looking at to focus on this 3x3 table. What we encourage folks to pay attention to most is looking at their chance of admission alongside the overall fit. So and we like to talk about chance of admission. We don't like the language safety target reach just because that's I feel like anyway, that's disempowering to students and families because remember that students and families are evaluating in colleges just as much as they are being evaluated. So we like the language to focus on your chance of admission instead of the safety target reach or forgetting the new language or likely target reach, right, is what they've replaced safety with. So we like to see using this 3x3 table, we like to see some diversity in the responses. If basically not every box filled, but that people have some schools on their list where they have a moderate to high chance of admission. But all of the schools that they're considering applying to should be a moderate or high overall fit. If there's a school on there that's a low fit, even if it's a high chance of admission, I would encourage that student to really look and see if there's other better fit colleges out there that have a high chance of admissions for them. So this is a helpful way to look at it instead of just using the buckets or saying that, oh, well, make sure that every college fits you. There's degrees of fit at these colleges, right? So this allows you to break down those degrees of fit a little bit. But I know this is, Amanda, you have anything to add to this? Sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No worries. No, and one of the things that I think is important too is throughout, really from page 1 of the workbook, we talk about how students should interact and use their college support network, right? So that could be you as a school counselor, teachers, parents, a cousin that maybe went off to college, maybe a mentor, anybody that really can help them sort of navigate this process. And so throughout the entire book, but especially the leads, we really do try to encourage students throughout the way to, as they're collecting this data and they're analyzing this information based on who they are, their fit, right, that we talk about, that they are using those adults in their life that can help guide them. So I think that's really important when a student can come to you with their 3x3, and all of a sudden when a student can say, you know, I've asked many students, like, why this college? Well, I believe this college is a good fit for me because of the student support services they have, because it has a high retention rate. Like, when they can start using some of those qualifiers that we have, now you're getting that real conversation and you can really help them and, you know, look at blind spots and what's going on. And so this 3x3 chart really is, again, just such a game changer because it brings the student into the decision-making process, where otherwise, if we completely focus on chance of admissions, again, they have no sort of advocacy within that application system. So this actually provides a thing that gives that sort of autonomy to the students. And again, kind of going back to Tim, what you said about safety, you know, there are some amazing schools that are quote unquote safety schools. And so that's really, like you said, disempowering. So really try to change that conversation and saying that it's really based more on chance of admissions and that they are some amazing schools. And if it's a good fit and it's in that safety quote unquote target range, fantastic, especially if it is a high chance of admissions, can really mean scholarships and other opportunities. So honors programs, you know, things like that. So I'll go, okay, go ahead, Tim.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, you go ahead with this. Yeah.
It's all right. Tim gets excited. So in the last two, in Decide and Succeed, one of the things that, you know, as Tim mentioned earlier on, as the students go through the 6 keys, they're building on that information they've learned. They've learned it from websites. They've learned it from visiting the colleges. They've learned it from when they do a college tour, when they are talking to their college support network. You know, a lot of times when students start the process, say as a junior, by the time it's a senior and they're making that decision, their list has completely changed. And so that's what we love about the card sort activity and going through multiple times and doing that activity as they learn more information. Because for example, one of the students I was talking to the other day that I do college advising for, they told me a month into it that they have an accommodation. And so now, as an accommodation, we needed to talk about student support services and their adaptive services. And now the schools that they were interested were less appealing because it really wasn't a good fit. And so in the Decide, once all the decisions come out, and more importantly, once the award letters come out and you can actually look at what that net price is we want families to actually go through that whole analysis again, you know, rank them and decide what is most important and which college meets all, you know, as many of those college fit factors as possible. So just throughout, we do it in the list section, we do it in the explore section, we do it in the apply and decide section. We do it again for the last time to make that final decision. Go ahead. And then lastly, oh, sorry. So I guess no, there's not a lastly, we got 2 more slides. So again, when we're talking about this, and I went through the same thing, Tim has gone through the same thing with our child, desirability is really hard. When you're talking about a student saying, oh, that's just really my school, that's that emotional factor. So throughout this whole kind of scaffolded approach that we've been talking about, and we're systematic, is we've really tried to remove the emotionality, or the desirability is what we call it in the book, out of the equation, right? We want them to focus on those outcomes, those kind of data points. This is when now we need to have that conversation, is where do you feel you're going to be most successful? And that's really hard to quantify, right? And what does that look like for each student is vastly different. So once they're making that decision, we do bring in this next step. We have the data, and now we have that sort of emotional. So what is that fit based on? Is it really low that I really don't want to go there? There's something about it. What's going on? Moderate, high, along with your overall fit, again, to make that 3x3 decision making. And then we do have them go through a process of really thinking of the whole lead section, building the list, exploring, applying, and really going through this kind of hierarchy of decision making to really make sure that they're thinking of everything before they make that big, it's the first big life decision. And so really just walking them through that systematically. Go ahead. And now, lastly, one of the things that, as a school counselor, this was something that, I did a really great job at the first part of leads, the list, exploring, even the applying. Deciding was a little bit harder. I kind of said, oh, let me know where you're going and what that is. I didn't really teach a decision-making process. And now I do. And the other thing that I did not do well as a counselor, and I think a lot of counselors can attest to this, because the end of the year, we get busy, there's a lot of stuff going on, is that we're not teaching them how to develop a success plan. And unfortunately, about half of students who start a 4-year degree aren't going to graduate within 4 years. And they're either getting completely out of the college funnel and they're dropping out, or they're taking 5 or 6 years. So we really want you to consider developing into your curriculum the 3 kind of areas that every student should have a plan for. One is financial integration. How are you going to either maintain your scholarships, continue with financial aid, look for opportunities, but how are you going to pay that sort of the final price? Are you taking loans? What does that look like? What are your parents paying? But really talking through that financial piece, and what do you need to do to keep that as low as possible all the way through your 4 years of college. Your academic integration, like how are you from day one going to be meeting with your advisor? What if you change your major? How are you interacting with your professors? What are the plan to make sure that if you're struggling, that you're going to go to the tutoring labs and get help? So just, again, making sure that students are aware and have a plan for their success. And then lastly, how to use the resources of the college socially, right? And of course, there's the dorm life, but there's also the clubs and the activities and all the things that they can do to really not only build their resume, but also feel like they are a part of the campus. And I think that that's a really critical piece for everybody. So in the last chapter, we have them develop these 3 plans to really make sure that they are not one of those statistics that aren't going to be successful once they go off to post-secondary education. Go ahead. So one of the things Julie is going to put in the chat is we have given you a 30-day view of the College on Maze books. We get it every year. We get questions about, hey, we really want to see the book. We want to see what it looks like, and you want to see how that curriculum is laid out. So she's going to put that link into the chat. The other book she's going to put in the chat is one of our newer books. It's a short, we call it a mini book, and it's on dual enrollment, which is an area that I'm very passionate about. We worked with NACEP, the National Alliance of Concurrent Enrollment Partnerships, and some other the CCRC and other programs to build the only dual enrollment curriculum that is available on the market. And just so you know, we do talk about both sort of the general education classes, like a Comp 1 or college algebra, but also CTE, career technical education, we feel is very important and definitely on the rise. So CTE and general education courses are included, whether they're on your campus or they are going to another college or university online or on their campus. It will be a valuable resource. So both of those, the flip books are available to you. So you definitely want to keep those links. And if you do have any questions, definitely reach out to Tim or I. My email is astirk@collegeunmaze.com. And then Dr. Poynton is tim.poynton@umb.edu. And so everything is there. And like I said, if you wanted some of those mind map posters, just email me your address and happy to send those over to you. And we also have the PDF version too. You can put on your, your Canvas page or whatever that may be. Julie, did we miss anything? Or I know we got just a few minutes left.
No, that was terrific and so much amazing information. I'll just give people a moment if you have any questions that you feel are still hanging out there or that we haven't talked about. So I'll give people a moment, but I did put those links in the Q&A, so everyone should receive those. And
Ooh, and I will say with the new student book, we do have videos that go along with it. So when you click on it, you'll see a little kind of YouTube link at the beginning of each chapter, and which is really nice because it helps engage students and just know that that flip book is available for all schools. So we provide kind of a one-stop shop accessible for all families if you're interested.
that's great. And Amanda and Timothy are going to be doing a workshop for families if you'd like to send your families to that. And that is on, I'll just give the date. Well, you can go to the MEFA website, just the general mefa.org/events, and you can find that link and send your families there. And I think that's it. Thank you so much, both of you, and thank you all for joining us this morning.
Awesome. It's such a
Thank you.
pleasure. We always appreciate being on.
All right. And everyone, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, everyone did hang up, so I can say thank you. Usually I can't. Usually
Well, I
people-
think it's still recording though, so you might want to stop
Yes.
the recording.
Yes, thank you.